Hello everyone! Today we're diving into a new botanical illustration. We'll be sketching the elegant and colorful hyacinth. In this video, I'll walk you through each step of the drawing process, from the initial sketch to the final touches. No stress, just the pure pleasure of capturing nature one line at a time. So, grab your sketchbook, get comfortable, and let's get started. First, I roughly mark the area where the hyacinth flower head will be. Then, I slowly begin to block in the general shapes, placing ovals and circles to show where the individual flowers will go. Each one of these simple shapes will become a flower later on. Now, I'm starting to sketch the individual little flowers that make up the hyacinth bloom. So now I'm gradually sketching in all the flowers, using both the photo and the real plant in front of me as a reference. After I finish sketching the first layer of flowers, I take a kneaded eraser and gently lift some of the graphite from the page. This helps me go over the sketch a second time with more confidence. Now I can redraw the flowers more precisely and with better detail. So, the first pencil layer is like a rough draft, a soft guide, and the second layer is cleaner and more accurate. I always use this layered approach in my drawings because it helps me work more carefully and with more focus. And now I'm slowly going over each flower again, very gently and neatly. Alright, we're now mentally prepared to dive into the drawing. I'll begin from the center of the flower cluster and gradually move outward, shading each little bloom along the way. First, I want to lightly shade the part of the flower that connects to the stem. And now, a little tip. At this stage, I am gently outlining the edge thickness of each petal. This tiny detail makes the flower look more realistic. The key is to keep this outline super thin and subtle, just enough to suggest the thickness of the petal. I'm trying to show the direction of light, so on the left side, I'm keeping the shading very soft, while on the right side, I'm adding darker and deeper strokes. This helps create a sense of depth in the drawing. Now I'm shading the second flower and I'm doing exactly the same steps as with the first one. Little by little, I start adding the inner lines on the petals, and I'll also darken the center of the flower to create more contrast and depth. This approach really helps make the flower look expressive and three-dimensional. Now moving on to the third flower. As you can see, I'm continuing with the same method. By the way, I've noticed that with plants like this, where the bloom is made of lots of small flowers, the drawing usually takes much longer. That's because each tiny flower needs just as much attention and detail as a single big flower. So, this kind of work takes patience. It's almost like meditation. Just take your time and enjoy the process. Now it's time to add a bit of variety and draw one of the unopened flower buds in the hyacinth bloom. Remember, we talked about how hyacinth don't bloom all at once. When the flowers in the middle are already open, the ones at the top are still in bud form. And later, when the middle flowers start to fade, the top ones will be fully open. So, to make the illustration more realistic, I decided to include all these different blooming stages. Now I'm moving on to the next flower. As always, I start by gently lightening the pencil lines with the kneaded eraser, and then I begin adding details, just like we did with the previous ones. This is actually the last flower in the very center of the bloom. We'll draw it the same way as the others. And for the ones on the sides, I'll explain what we're going to do with them a bit later. Now I'm carefully shading the flowers, or flower parts, that are tucked inside the bloom behind the front row. This is a very important stage, because we don't want the entire drawing to look flat or chaotic, as if all the flowers were drawn with the same level of detail. And here is a little trick. Try to keep the flowers in the background lighter. Don't press too hard with your pencil. That way, the front flowers will look more contrasted, and the ones in the back will gently fade into the background, giving a nice sense of depth. Right now, everything might still look quite similar in tone, but keep this in mind as you go. Later, we can always darken the front flowers a bit more if needed. So, let's keep shading those second layer flowers around the central part of the bloom. At this stage, you can see that we've shaded almost all of the flowers, but some of them are starting to blend together into one soft gray area. So now our goal is to take a softer pencil and carefully bring out the flowers that are in the foreground. To make them stand out, I'll also darken the background a little, right behind those flowers, to add even more depth. So let's grab an HB pencil and start working with that. A softer pencil like this helps us deepen the shadows and bring some contrast back into the drawing. Now that we've added more shadow between the flowers, let's go ahead and draw the stem too. To do that, I'm using small curved pencil strokes, following the shape of the stem from the edge toward the center. Alright, now we need to give the drawing even more depth and volume, so it starts to look almost 3D. To do that, I'll once again make the flowers in the foreground more contrasty and the ones on the edges softer and lighter, almost airy. Perfect. And finally, let's go back and darken the flowers in the foreground just a bit more, so they really pop and come forward in the composition. Great! We finished drawing the entire inflorescence. Now let's complete the drawing by adding the leaves around it. They are quite simple, so this part will be nice and easy. Now I'm drawing vertical lines to imitate the parallel venation on the leaf, just like we see in real plants. This helps make the drawing look as realistic as possible. Let's give it a try. Perfect. And finally, we'll be focusing on the bulb and the roots of the plant. So, let's continue and finish our illustration. First, I want to create the overall volume of the bulb without adding any details just yet. So, I'm starting with light, even horizontal strokes, following the shape of the bulb. I draw from the outer edge toward the center. This helps to build a base that feels round and three-dimensional. At this stage, we are not focusing on details. All we need is a soft sense of form, like a simple sphere, because that's the shape a bulb most closely resembles. Then I slowly start adding more definition to the central part. I try to create a subtle effect where one layer of the bulb slightly overlaps another. It gives the drawing a more realistic and visually interesting look. Now take a look at the top part of the bulb. You can see that it's made up of several overlapping layers. To be honest, I'm intentionally exaggerating some parts a little to make the drawing look more natural and beautiful. So, while I'm following the photo reference, I also try to make the shape more expressive. Now, I want to start adding texture to the bulb. Right now, the shape looks too smooth and perfect, but I want to make it more realistic by adding little imperfections, like small dents and bumps. So, I'm going to lightly shade in some irregular spots across the surface of the bulb to mimic this uneven, textured look. Now let's draw some of the roots. I really enjoy sketching them with all their curly, twisting shapes. I think they add so much character to the bulb. It's a simple form, while the roots are full of intricate details. It's also important to darken one side of each root a little to make the lighting more believable. So I am taking a softer pencil and gently shading one side of the roots. This will also bring more depth and airiness to the drawing. And here we are! Look at this beautiful result we've created together! Thank you so much for drawing with me today! I hope you enjoyed this calm and creative time. Step by step, stroke by stroke, we brought this lovely hyacinth to life on paper. If you'd like to see the full process with more details, I've also made a longer version of this tutorial. It's available for my Botanical Explorer tier on Patreon. Thanks again for being here, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye bye!